Good day, and welcome to Merry Christmas and Murder. I woke up the next morning unsure how to proceed, which was rarely a problem for me. I went downstairs and decided to get a sticky donut and a cup of coffee for breakfast. Sitting there eating my donut, thinking how disappointed I was, it was sprinkled with some kind of red and green garbage. Regretting taking Ruthie's money, quite sure I wasn't prepared for the headache this would turn into. Christmas music aside. He is Leslie Handler. It was too much of a coincidence that she was seen at the handlebar with Lance Abor and seems to be without an alibi for the evening Leston was murdered. I needed to speak with her alone. Back to the Witherworths, I suppose. As the taxi pulled up to the Witherworth estate yet again, I begrudgingly exited the vehicle. This was not going to be pleasant. As I made it to the front of the house, the door flung open and there stood Suzanne Witherworth. "You're such an asshole, Joseph!" she screamed at the top of her lungs, her voice laced with Chardonnay and malice before she turned to see me there. "Oh, Mr. Stone," she said sweetly. "Good morning, Mrs. Witherworth," I said, as her husband pushed past her to talk to me. "What do you want, Private Dick? We've already wasted enough time and money on you. Surely you're still not bothered by Lestenero's death. I'd be more bothered by my wife's constant ear-wrenching screeching. I thought you may be here to issue a citation." "Cut! Cut!" screeched Mrs. Witherworth. Looking at the two of them standing there, I thought to myself, this is worse than Christmas music, and I would prefer the smell of pine nuts over Mrs. Witherworth's breath any day of the week. "Actually," I interrupted their squabbling, "I'm here to speak with Leslie Handler." "Whatever for?" asked Mr. Witherworth. "I just have a few questions I would like to ask her," I replied. "I guess so. She's out in the field, but when you speak with her, Private Dick, let her know this counts as her break for the day. Time is money, Dick." "Thank you, sir," I replied, grinding my teeth, making my way to the field. As I walked to the field, I saw who appeared to be Leslie Handler training a horse with Becky Witherworth. I walked over to Becky Witherworth and said good morning. "Good morning, detective. What can I do for you?" she asked, smiling warmly. "I'm actually here to see Leslie," I replied. Leslie turned as white as the snow that surrounded her. Shaking, she said, "How can I help you, Mr. Stone?" "Well, I'm looking into Lestenero's murder, and I'm investigating everyone who could have had contact with him the night he was murdered." "Well, I was with the at the Witherworth Employee Appreciation Dinner that night," Leslie said. "But you weren't there all night," said Becky. "You left at 9:45 p.m. to meet your date. You didn't get the pleasure of receiving your canned ham in person." Yeah. I forgot. Yeah, I had a date." Leslie said. "A date? How nice. Who with, if you don't mind me asking?" She was white before. She was transparent now. I, she stammered. "I can't remember." "I find that very hard to believe, Miss Handler," I said dryly. "Leslie, who were you with that night? It wasn't that long ago. Surely you can remember." Becky probed. Tears started to appear in Leslie's eyes. It was then I hit the record button on the recorder in my pocket. It's okay, Leslie. What happened? I asked with an even tone in my voice. You, you, you don't understand. He will kill me, she trembled. Who, Leslie? Asked Becky before I was able to. I'm so sorry, Becky. I didn't mean for any of this to happen, Leslie said. I'm so sorry. Leslie, I promise I will make sure you are protected. You just need to tell me the truth, I said. Oh, okay. I just need to get this out, Leslie went on. I left the employee party to meet Sheriff Lance Abor up the road by the Nutcracker Tower. We've been having an affair for 6 months or so. When I got there, I got in his car as usual, and we started to fool around. We were in the car for about 15 minutes when we heard a knock at the window. First, I thought it might be my brother Lee, but when Lance rolled down the window, it was Leston Arrow standing there. What happened next? I asked sternly. Lance grabbed his gun and got out of the car, so angry and out of control. He tripped over his underpants and stubbed his toe on a rock and fell in the snow. When he got up, he was livid, Leslie cried. Lance stood up and asked what Leston was doing out there, and if he knew what kind of trouble he was in, she continued. Leston said he couldn't sleep and went out for a walk in the quiet and the cold. And I can see, Lance, it's very cold for some of us. Which only made Lance angrier. It was at that moment Lance raised his gun and told Leston to turn around and kneel with his hands on his head. Leston tried to tell him he was only joking. Lance wouldn't have it, Leslie wailed. Lance repeated it himself, and Leston knelt in the snow, slowly. There was silence for a moment, and I thought perhaps it would be okay, that Lance would get back into the car. Then I heard the gun, saw a bright flash, and heard Leston cry, Becky, before falling to the ground. As I struggled to process what Leslie had just admitted to being a part of, I looked to Becky, who fell to her knees in the snow. I told Leslie that in order to protect her, she needed to come with me, and I sent a text to Ruthie to meet at the hotel on Main Street. When the taxi pulled up, I opened the door for Leslie and turned to Becky. I'm so sorry, I said as I got into the car. I will be in touch with you as soon as I can. And with that, we drove off to meet Ruthie.